So the majority of us humans have a bad habit of comparison. They say compare and despair, and that comparison is the thief of joy. And the reality is you should never compare yourself to others, only to your previous self. But this video is not about that, but it is about trauma and the fact that, as I would listen in on sobriety calls and I would hear people with, major traumas in their past, sadly sexually related for way too many women, but many other forms. And I would think, well, I haven't ever had a major trauma. We're alcoholics because we process alcohol differently, but there's more to it than that in terms of the reasons we drink. And, for many, it's to overcome past traumas. And it was very helpful to me when I discovered in therapy that rejection and exclusion are forms of trauma. And I experienced a lot of that in high school and college, and even after that, I've experienced some of that. So, and what I discovered is those are more what they call little T's, little traumas that are essentially small traumas that accumulate over time. I actually talk about little traumas and how they shape our identity and hold us back on videos number 25 and 26 here on YouTube. But I thought, there's got to be more to it in terms of what's holding me back. And I thought, I think alcoholism and the daily struggle with overcoming this monster is trauma in itself. And I've never heard that. And I did some Googling and didn't find much until finally I found one great article on it from the Guest House, which I will put the link in the notes. And I'm going to read a little from it and then give my thoughts on it. They say, the more we become addicted, the more shame we experience, which I speak on a lot, and we should absolutely not feel shame. This is a chronic brain disorder on par with Alzheimer's. But it goes on, shunned by society, disrupting our lives and disconnecting ourselves from intimate relationships, we are increasingly isolated. Addiction is remarkably isolating to the point even the most social addict is a remarkably lonely person. I heard that from a mental health professional. So they go on to say, addiction feels out of control. Chemical dependency takes over the brain and the body and creates a deep need to stay intoxicated. Reprogramming of the brain confuses the production of pleasure and the affiliation of reward. Decision-making and cognitive function is lost. The ability to think about anything other than alcohol is lost as the brain becomes obsessed, feeling a daily, desperate need to abuse the brain and body and cause damage or danger to one's own life is torturous. Each day, dignity disappears a little more, and life as it once was known slips further away. Addiction can and often is traumatizing. They nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. And again, since it happens over time, say, it's more in the form of little T's, little traumas. Whereas, unlike a big trauma that has a more defined beginning and an end, and one can more easily rationalize the response to it. In this case, we struggle with our response to it and, beat ourselves up, etc. And also with big traumas, self-forgiveness and acceptance from oneself and from one's support system can lead to healing. But that's a much more difficult process with alcoholism because no one fully understands it, not even those of us that struggle with it. And I do say, those of you that slip and feel shame are part of the problem because you should never feel shame. And I'm trying to educate the world on this, that this is a chronic brain disorder and you should not shame anyone for slipping more so than you'd shame someone, an Alzheimer's patient, for forgetting your name. So I think this is fascinating, and I think it's very important to know that the struggle with alcoholism is trauma in itself, and that creates a lot of the struggles that we face as we come out of that. And again, I talk about particularly on episode number 26, where I'm struggling with all kinds of, procrastination issues, etc., which is a response, it's essentially, as I get overwhelmed, my body's doing the same trauma response it had when I was in the throes of drinking, which essentially was just to survive the day and, productivity be damned. So check those other episodes out if you haven't. And I hope having this knowledge with you will help, because awareness is empowerment. All right, that'll do it. Remember, stronger, sober. And as always, please like, share, subscribe. Thanks.